We're just a few weeks away from the start of campaign season. Politics is still very hot in the air. All the parties involved are still trying to sort out all their internal wranglings. And Nigerians are watching, but some are watching from afar. We're going to be talking today about what has become the Japa culture. A lot of Nigerians are trying to find their way out of the country, understandably for a lot of reasons. But what can we do to stem what is going to be an eventual problem for the country? We already see it in every single sector of Nigerian life, whether it's tech, whether it's medicine, whether it's entertainment. We're going to be talking about that today. Should you or should you not exit, like Andrew did back in the 80s? I'm joined here by Blessing Abeng, who's a co-founder in Ingressive for Good. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you.
And Nkonya Akuma, a migration expert. I like that tag. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to read out a few data. Said there was a survey by Pew, which talked about basically the numbers of what's happening in Nigeria. I mean, a couple of countries are surveyed, and Nigeria topped the charts with people with the most numbers of people who want to leave their countries for another country. About 14% have already taken necessary steps. 30% have applied for necessary documents like passports or a visa. 34% have saved or borrowed money to do that. And at least 55% of Nigerians have a plan of some sort to leave. That's heavy. That's good for your business, I guess. But tech seems to be also hit. I hear a lot of people who employ labor saying, "Oh, my manager just quit last week," or here that's becoming a very recurring story. In medicine, we hear that a lot. I think it was Bauchi. I can't remember the exact state in the north. Now let me not quote. Where they say they have just about 100 doctors left in the entire state.
Oh, wow.
That's how bad it is. What's your thoughts on what's happening from your sector's perspective and what you do as a business?
I mean, it's hard for the ecosystem, but it's also challenging people to do more and think different. Of course, the brain drain is alarming. It's so sad to go through any process of hiring and then eventually you now have to think about hiring someone else just because someone else is leaving. So people need to sort of explore newer ways. Thanks to COVID, well, no thanks to COVID, but also thanks to COVID, it sort of helped us see what was possible, that remote work was possible. And really that opened a couple of doors for people to apply for jobs, to apply for opportunities to earn in bigger foreign currencies. It's sad, but we can also understand why people are doing it. It's about means of livelihood, it's about survival. Immigration is a survival instinct.
Yeah.
Animals do it, human beings do it. It's sad, but I mean, we need to dig deeper to think about the underlying reason why that is happening.
Yeah. Speaking of reasons now, you obviously deal with a lot of people who are going through this process. I mean, there are some sectors you can say, okay, we can always find somebody else, but things like medicine, doctors are so critical to life. I read somewhere that between 2016 and 2018, which was pre all of the drama we're seeing now, at least 9,000 doctors left Nigeria. For the UK, Canada, Saudi Arabia, Australia, wherever it is, 9,000 in just 2 years. And between 2018 and now, we know it's gotten even worse. What sort of reasons do you hear? Is it just a money issue? Is it the fact that they don't see any reason to stay back here anymore?
So coming from the medical aspect, most of the doctors that I have come in contact with have actually explained, for one, we have a very poor health system. A health system where there are no up-to-date facilities to be able to guide or help through with the entire process as a medical doctor in the hospitals. And you have patients who eventually, I mean, you're having patients come in and you don't have the necessary facilities to take care of these patients. So it's the poor healthcare system. I've met a couple of doctors who have said to me they're underpaid. I mean, for the length of years, you can imagine going to medical school, come out housemanship, and for the length of years they've been in school, they come out and you probably hear a doctor being paid 100,000, 150. After the years of investment. So in most cases, they want to be in countries where their degree, the skills, their expertise, knowledge is seem as relevant and then is also put into good use and at the end of the day is beneficial to the economy and themselves.
Yeah. What sectors do you see the most flight from?
I have to be honest with you, it's every
Across
sector.
board.
Yes, across board right now. The doctors, the tech guys, like you mentioned,
A lot of the tech
a lot of the
guys.
tech guys.
Finance as well.
Yes, finance, client services. So I really have I worry that our service system at some point, I mean, like she mentioned, the brain drain. I worry that it would hit us bad in that regard, because trust me, we're here and then you probably have a HR that has gotten a cast letter to leave, or I mean, recently we had issues with the banking. I don't know if you were aware, GT, Zenith, their systems were down. It was crazy for weeks on end, and I mean, these guys are leaving. Really, so it's across board.
And even beyond that, there are some workers who are seen here as menial workers, like truck drivers.
Very sought after too.
Sought after heavily, and they earn way more. Their skills are respected. Even as a hairdresser in the UK, for example, you make way more money. You would have way more time on your hands versus if you were
hair costs like 300. This will cost like about 300 pounds.
Yeah.
Thereabouts. Yes, true.
I mean, I think I saw a joke on Twitter some time ago about somebody who put in a paper and said she was resigning, and there was like hoopla in the office, and then she bought a flight to relocate to Canada, and her HR manager was on the flight as well.
Oh wow!
Moving to Canada.
Oh my God, that's painful.
Well, that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
You know, you mentioned something about you know, this kind of skills that are required or whatever. Do you think this is going to stop anytime soon, or are we just even starting? Here's why I ask that. The economies around the world are crashing. So you would think, okay, everywhere is bad, as bad as where you're coming from. But we are going through our own problems with the security and all of that. But across the world, especially the developed world, population is declining. So they need people. And we have a lot of people who want to leave. Is this just the start of what might be a bigger problem, you think?
Okay, I definitely think so. We have a large younger population. The countries that are battling with their young population, right? They have older population, but they don't have a lot of young people to do the work that they need. Also, we're willing to take a pay cut. Because when we think about the value of the money versus the value of the lives we're living down here, it doesn't make sense. One of the biggest reasons I've heard from people is access, right? Just like the value of your passport. I know someone who lost a promotion because he couldn't get a visa to go for an important meeting, and somebody else who had a blue passport had the freedom to go for that meeting, and that person was chosen over him for the promotion. I also know a couple of friends who work in the tech sector, and they had this retreat in Europe, and of all the people that applied, only 10 people got the visas. It's very limiting, and everybody knows that freedom is important. That's freedom, that access, having the choice to be able to say, this is what I want to do, not necessarily doing it, but having that choice. It's really difficult to be Nigerian. You're already labeled a certain way. Your passport already limits you. You go through a lot of things, right? And so by default, people just are looking for better opportunities. And the country is not exactly getting better. Inflation is not getting better. And one thing I know I have as a conversation with my friends is Nigeria is not very citizen-centric. It's like, it's Nigeria, but they don't think, I don't think our leaders think, how can we keep our citizens at the forefront? How can we create
policy,
of anything? Like, how can we create with our people in mind? How can we make transportation easier for our people? How can we make their means of livelihood easier? So when people go to new countries and they see, wow, these people care so much about me, and I'm not even a citizen, it changes their mindset. There's so much that we think about. I was talking to a friend recently, and I was like, decision fatigue is a thing. You wake up in the morning, you're thinking, oh, there might be no light. We need to buy gen. I need to buy fuel. Oh, fuel might spoil soon. My security. It's just so much that you're thinking about that's not part of your basic life. It's not important. And by the time you're now doing the things that are important, you're burned out. So when people experience a different life that is not as tasking, it feels better. Life feels better. The middle class is just one illness away from poverty.
Let me ask a two-part question. First to you, I'll ask you the other part of it. First is, I hear you, but a lot of us have probably been outside of Nigeria, and either to leave or visit, and you know when you don't belong, right? The idea of a second-class citizen is very real. I schooled abroad. I was there for 2 years, and I know how different things felt. Is that ever a factor, you think? Or people don't just really care? As long as I can make that money, you know, I can be a second-class citizen wherever, whether it's by racism or my nationality. We all know how Nigerians get treated in other places. Yeah. Does that factor in, you think, to
Definitely.
anybody?
I have definitely had conversations where people bring this up. However, there's also the fact that in your own country, you're also treated as a second-class citizen.
So
NSAS was one of the biggest triggers for a lot. Like if you check the statistics, the number of people that emigrated after NSAS was not
There was a
funny.
spike.
Yes, because it was like, I don't even feel safe in my country. I don't feel safe as a citizen of my country. There's no one I can complain to. However, I could even, you know, file a lawsuit against somebody, even if I'm a second-class citizen. It feels like I have more rights as a second-class citizen than as a first-class citizen. So sometimes that affects how people view it and see it. And so, yes, it's a problem, but it's something they're willing to swallow at some point because it's not exactly very different in their homeland.
Yeah. So that's an argument against immigrating.
Yeah.
But for immigration, I've heard people say, well, you know, what's it called? Remittances from Nigerians abroad is one of our highest foreign exchange earners, or revenue earners even, for the country, period. Billions of dollars coming to this country every year from Nigerians to the diaspora. Is it also probably a good way to look at it, like we're feeding a system that's going to benefit us economically? Does that make sense?
Feeding a system that would benefit us economically, honestly, we have the dollar devaluation right now, right? The Naira devaluation to dollar. And it's not going to be far from now. I mean, there've been airlines, we've heard from the airlines that are actually right now suspending flights, and some are saying they're
insisting on dollar payments
because of the dollar payments. As much as we have this this access from the people in diaspora, I mean, making waves for what's it called in Nigeria now, the economy. At the same time, there's also a downside to really, like I said, with the whole dollar, the Naira devaluation. I had a conversation with someone a few days ago, and he said to me, I worry we'll get to a point where we will not have access to our FX in our bank accounts. And
everybody's been talking about
yes, it's
legit fear.
Look, exactly. And so in as much as we have people in diaspora sending the money in, I mean, is this also channeled into a better economy, a stable economy? I mean, an environment where we know, oh, these funds are coming in, it'll be used to better the lives of citizens, really. So as much as these funds are coming in, I mean, there's also a worry about will it be utilized in such a way that it would also benefit the people in the economy.
So if you talk to our parents or our grandparents or whatever, they tell you that this has happened in phases. You know, in the 70s, around the Civil War, right after, there was a whole wave of people who left. Then sometime in the 80s as well, with the coups and SAP, especially Structural Adjustment Program, there was another wave of people who left. In the 90s, it happened as well when the June 12 was annulled. So it's like at every point in time, this sort of wave happens.
Yeah.
But there's also the argument that this might not be a wave because this feels a little different. In the past, you had fear of the economy collapsing, but this time it looks like it's multifaceted. You know, there's insecurity, there's just so much happening. Do you think this, I mean, elections are coming. People are saying, oh, we're listening to the candidates to see if there's some hope somewhere. Do you think this tide will stem at some point, or you think this is different?
I think it's totally dependent on who becomes president next, for sure, because you would then feel a certain level of hope or lack of hope. And that's going to be the big decision factor, right? Just the way we've had waves of people leaving, we've also had waves of people coming back. And it's heavily dependent on who is ruling, what policies are in place. If I come here, will I succeed? I'm super sure that in the next 5-10 years, most of the people who have left would consider coming back. Home is different. You know, we all have ties back here. Everybody has ties back. No matter where you travel to, you come back to your family, your sister, your friends, your whoever, right? And so people will definitely come back if they feel there is an opportunity for them to succeed. And if they feel like, you know, the environment is conducive for them to leave. One important factor that I think we don't talk about enough is Nigeria used to be very community-centric. We used to come from a community-led approach where we solve community problems with community solutions. But things had sort of evolved over time where we're now approaching community problems with individual solutions. The roads are bad, let's buy a bigger car. There's no lights, let's buy a bigger jet. And so now Nigeria is not working for me, let me figure my life out. Everybody else would be fine. Nobody's thinking about Nigeria when they're trying to leave, right? And so if somebody can really make them feel, you know, there's something in Nigeria worth thinking about, worth considering, definitely, I think it would be a wave. But if not, it might be an actual drain.
Yeah. So you obviously talk to a lot of people and you probably know a lot of the reasons why. If you can, what's the one thing you think, if it got fixed or tackled even, would stem this from the reasons you hear from people? Are people afraid? Like she said, NSARS, insecurity, my life is not safe here. Yeah. Is it an economic issue? If the economy improves and other factors are still kind of there, will people stay back? What do you think is the one thing that could sort of help slow this down at least?
So in my opinion, it would be, I mean, cut across some of the things that you've said. Invest heavily in the education system. In my opinion, coming from being an immigration expert.
A lot of people are leaving for school.
For school, yeah. True, because I mean, at the moment, I mean, they understand that's actually like the easiest route to leave right now. So invest heavily in the education system. I mean, you invest in the education system, you're also investing in the human capital, right? And then at the same time, you're eventually investing in the economy, growing the economy more like. So, like I said, in my opinion, it would be invest in the education system. I mean, it's so sad, not to shade anyone, but we've had teachers that teach right now in schools that are not qualified teachers.
Sure. It's not shade, it's fact.
We also have, we're also churning out graduates that cannot, what's it called now? Compete at the international standards. I mean, they are with their counterparts. We're still dealing with the old curriculum. I mean, what my father probably knew in the 70s is what they're still teaching my daughter. It's crazy. So I think, in my opinion, if the government invests in, in education, we'll start from there. I mean, we've been on strike. The federal schools have been on strike since February. It seems like nothing is happening. No one cares about the, the individuals, this younger generation who are basically the backbone of the economy. And so I think investing in the educational system is one good way to help invest in the economy and
get people engaged.
Yes, exactly.
Funny enough, I have not so much of a conflicting opinion, but an alternate thought, right? Where what we do at Ingressive, for example, is educating people to learn tech skills, right, for free. And what we've noticed is that internet tech has created an opportunity where people now have access to education. Well, not basic education, but they do have access to, if I want to learn software development, I can learn it in 6 months. Yeah. We've had painters who learned software development and got foreign jobs, right? So I know that education is important, but I also think that is a bigger leverage problem. I think as a government, as Nigeria, we need to have leverage. We don't have leverage. Turkey could wake up one morning and say, we don't want you to be in our country anymore. Dubai can wake up and be like, we don't want Nigerians traveling here. So many times, do you understand? We don't have leverage. We don't have anything we can come back and fight with. And we do have a couple of resources that are working out for us. We have tech startups, we have great businesses, but somehow at the back of my mind, I can't shake the feeling that Nigeria just thinks of things that are working and thinks, oh no, this thing is working too much. Let's curb it. You know, like, there's that energy. It's so consistent. It's like, oh, too many people are now investing with dollars. Yeah. Where are they getting the dollars from?
Then they cop that, yeah.
Less, you know, and people want to go to school. This is an opportunity. Like you said, FX inflow is an opportunity. Think about how can we take that opportunity and make it into something big. Are there particular resources that we have? We have a great talent pool. What can we do with that? How can we better engage our people? But I don't see us thinking from that perspective. Do you understand? And I think that if we could maybe think more about people development, yes, education, but beyond education, startups are also very strong anchors of economies, right? Startups hire larger masses. Of course, bigger companies will hire a lot of people at once, but small startups would create jobs in small places. And when you see like 1 million startups, you could create at least 2 million jobs. But you're not enabling startups. You're bringing policies that ruin.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, and then there are companies, international companies are collaborating with our startups here. International companies are acquiring our startups. Our music, international people are collaborating with our musicians here. So there is this partnership, collaboration that is going on. Why is our government not also thinking, how can we enable this collaboration? How can we make it better? How can we capitalize on it? Are there ways that we can tax these people? They know we're the emerging economy. They're coming here for a reason. How can we better place them so our people benefit? And I think that's something that Ghana is getting right. It would be interesting to find ways to, you know, as Nigeria, think about opportunities like that for us.
So we're going to take a break now and be right back. Please stay with us.
Don't just stand there teasing me. Now it's time to show
On a final note, maybe I should just lead off from that to you. With what you do, you sort of help people figure out their lives outside of Nigeria. Is there a role for governments in that? Not necessarily in letting them leave, but sort of working in that system so that it's not a lose-lose situation. Or what can government do?
Don't talk bias right now. What can the government do? I mean, we've asked this question over the past years, and then we still see it's almost same circles that we are actually running back and forth. Yes, running in all the time. It's sad to say that I don't want to say there's not so much, to be honest, and that's why I said I didn't want to sound biased, but at this point, it seems like she mentioned, it seems like we are just on our own at the moment right now. The government isn't focusing on what's in place to better the lives of their citizens at this point. And so students, individuals have taken it upon themselves to say, you know what, if the government is not for me, I'll look for greener pastures. I'll look for a better way to...
we're already governments of ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. That's the word. So honestly, as sad as it's...
Yeah, you don't see a place
I don't
for them.
see.
I don't even know that they see a place for
I
themselves.
do see one thing that they can do though.
Okay.
It's actually cooler to be in Nigeria and earning foreign currency because the value of your money looks better, right? Because inflation would still affect it, but definitely inflation would still affect it. But there is also a level of stability because you've been earning $1,000, it's still $1,000, as opposed to I've been earning $500K, which was $1,000, but it's now quite $900. And it keeps fluctuating when you think internationally. So there's that opportunity. So if we had things like power, internet to start with, this education problem we're even talking about could find solutions there. People would still find their individual ways to find solutions. People would be able to even create businesses and all of those things. Yes, it might not affect the full economy, but it would help. It would create opportunities. It would make it easier to do business. Somebody that I personally know was having this a conversation with me, and he had a work call. Right in the middle of the work call, his internet froze, NEPA took light. And his colleague just said, oh, he's in Nigeria. And everybody's like, oh. And that was so embarrassing because, how can I...
You know us, sorry.
From Nigeria,
it's not news.
Your identity. It's such a terrible identity to have. So if they could just do the little things, you don't have to do too much. First, start with lights. Let light be constant. Just that little thing. And then we could move on to the next best thing.
Thank you very much. I know this conversation, I feel like at every turn, especially as the elections approach, you find people saying, I'm not going to be here next year for the elections, I'm leaving it. So it's a topic or a conversation that's going to be on for quite a while. Thanks for bringing your perspective. We're going to take a break now and be right back. Please stay with us.